Mahabharata, Chapter 15. School's Out. The princes had showcased their talent. The exam was over. School was out. In the demonstration of their talent, Yudhishthira was majestic. Bhima and Duryodhana sizzled with the mace and were ferocious. But it was Arjuna who stole the show and displayed supreme dexterity with the bow and arrow. The crowd was thoroughly entertained. The elders were proud of the princes. The queens cried in joy. And if all this wasn't enough, Karna came in at the end and made his mark. In the age of the Gurukulas, it was customary for the students to pay a fee to their teacher at the end of their education. This fee was not in terms of money or possessions, but in the form of a boon or a deed or a task. Drona assembled his pupils and addressed them. "Brave princes, your education is now over, and the time has come for you to render your preceptorial fee." The Pandavas and Kauravas obediently bowed to Drona. The Acharya continued, "The fee I demand is the capture of King Drupada of Panchala. You will have to fight his army, invade his kingdom, and capture the king alive. Bring him to me. This is the fee for the tutelage you have received." The Kuru princes nodded in unison and proceeded in their chariots to Panchala. As a recap, let us recall why Drona demanded this fee. Drupada and Drona were childhood friends. Drupada had promised Drona half his kingdom when the former became the king. However, when Drona went to Panchala at a time of need to request a few material items for comfortable living, Drupada humiliated Drona, saying that friendship is possible only amongst equals. Drona was a poor Brahmana and Drupada himself was a king. How could a friendship be possible? He had claimed. Drupada was drunk with power and made fun of Drona. Drona did not take this well. He vowed vengeance, and this was his time. Therefore, he asked the Kuru princes to defeat Drupada and capture him alive. The Kauravas rode in their chariots towards Panchala, closely followed by the Pandavas. The Kaurava army consisted of the 100 brothers, including Duryodhana and Duchasana, along with Karna, Yuyutsu, Vikrana, and Sulochana. These were mighty warriors who supported the Kauravas. The Pandavas waited about a mile outside the Panchala palace, while the Kauravas went to battle first. King Drupada was no ordinary warrior. Remember that as a young boy, he learnt and trained with Dronacharya, learning many of the same skills. He was also supported by his brothers and the Panchala princess. After a long and hard-fought battle, the Kauravas were defeated. They were humbled by the mighty army of King Drupada. Once the Kauravas returned, Drona then sent in the Pandavas. Arjuna, out of respect, requested Yudhishthira, their eldest brother, to stay behind. He then went into battle, with Nakula and Sahadeva protecting his chariot wheels, kind of like wingmen for a fighter plane. Bhima, as usual, went in by himself on a separate track, his mace in hand like a raging bull. Bhima first ran through a horde of elephants and single-handedly demolished that section of the army. Arjuna, meanwhile, skillfully used his arrows to disorient the rest of the soldiers. His speed was so great that no one could distinguish any interval between his fixing the arrows on the bowstring and letting them off. It was like watching a machine gun at work. Arjuna defeated the general of the Panchala army, Satyajit, and went straight for Drupada himself. Meanwhile, Bhima was busy flying from one section to another, slaying elephants by the dozens, scattering the army around him and roaring like a lion. Every time he was done with a section of the army, he alone was standing. The soldiers who fought him, the horses, the chariots, elephants, all laid lifeless on the ground. Arjuna and Drupada endured a great battle. Every arrow of Drupada was met with an equally powerful one from Arjuna. In the end, Arjuna disarmed Drupada by chopping his bow into two. He cut off the horses from his chariot and leapt into Drupada's carriage and seized him. At the sight of this, the Panchala troops ran away in all directions. Arjuna addressed Bhima, who was still not satisfied with the amount of fighting he had done, and said, "Brother, we have Drupada. We have achieved the purpose we came here for. Let the remaining soldiers live." Bhima acceded, and the Pandavas left the Panchala land with Drupada in their custody. They went to Drona and presented to him his fee. Drona faced Drupada and grinned with vengeance and addressed him. "Hello, king. Your kingdom is deserted. Your city is captured. Your army is defeated, and your palace is in my control. Your very life is in my hands." Drona chuckled and continued, "But don't fear. I am not going to kill you. That is not the style of us Brahmanas. I still remember us playing together as children. All I want from you is your friendship. Would you take me as your friend again?" Drona and Drupada stared at each other in silence as the vanquished Kauravas and the victorious Pandavas watched eagerly. Drona continued, "But wait, didn't you say that friendship can only be between equals? Didn't you say that a king can never be a friend of a poor person with no possessions? Well, now I own your kingdom and you are poor. We are still not equals. By your principle, we can't be friends, right? What a pickle. What do we do?" Drona continued in a tone like he was pretending to have an idea. "Ah, yes. I hereby give you half your kingdom. The other half I'll retain. This should make us equals, right? Now, Drupada, dear friend, now, would you accept my friendship?" Drupada, tired and weary, stared at Drona and slowly responded, "Your behavior does not surprise me. You are noble and powerful. I will be grateful to be your friend. I accept your offer. You have always been my friend, dear Drona. You're my friend for life." Thus, Drona and Drupada parted ways, each retaining half the kingdom of Panchala, dividing it where the river Ganga flowed through the land. Once he was back at his kingdom, Drupada could not forget the humiliation he received. He was obviously angry at Drona and sought vengeance, but he knew he couldn't do anything to him as long as Arjuna was by his side. After much thought and after consulting a lot of wise men, Drupada performed a huge yajna. A yajna is another word for a grand and powerful puja. In this yajna, he sought two boons. One, that he would have a son who would slay Drona, and a daughter who would marry Arjuna. The reasoning behind asking for such a daughter was that if his daughter wedded Arjuna, Arjuna would become his son-in-law and thus join his side. Soon, Drupada had two children, a son named Drishtadyumna and a daughter named Draupadi. This story tells us an important, subtle lesson. A negative emotion can never be the answer to a negative emotion. Again, a negative emotion can never be the answer to a negative emotion. If someone gets angry at you and you get angry in return, the anger only grows. In this story, there were two innocent children, Drupada and Drona, who were great friends. Drupada promised Drona half his kingdom upon growing up. This thought was an innocence. This thought was pure. However, when he grew up, Drupada cultivated a negative emotion called pride and humiliated Drona. As a result, the negative emotion called vengeance was born in Drona's mind. By humiliating Drupada in return, Drona cultivated a counter vengeance in Drupada's mind, another negative emotion. And so it continued. Even if one of them had simply forgiven the other and forgotten any of the bad incidents, perhaps a natural friendship may have resulted. Perhaps some affection could have bloomed. At the very least, the vengeance, the negative emotion, would have been chopped off. But it didn't happen. Both Drona and Drupada were slaves to their feelings of pride and vengeance. They let it grow. They let it take them over. In time, we will see how this vengeance eventually resulted in Drona's death in the Kurukshetra battle. As Mahatma Gandhi said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind."